Hey folks, Steve here with another all green alike video for you today. We are going to be looking at scenario 4, An End to Innocence. This is a scenario in the all green alike module of Stonewall Jackson's Way 2. And again, it's an 1861 scenario, very early in the war. And this is a bit different from the previous scenario we covered. I skipped over a few and jumped to scenario 4 because I think it's going to give me a very different feel for the gameplay experience, because this scenario is functionally the day of battle of First Bull Run. And this is a scenario that only lasts one turn. While the previous scenario we played across the Potomac was a four-turn sort of experience of approaching to battle and approaching locations and kind of figuring out where things are at. This kind of puts us right into the action, like we're about to start fighting, and that puts a very different set of constraints on both sides, both players, for this. Now, we are using a different map from the last scenarios. The last scenario used the Here Come the Rebels map from Roads to Gettysburg 2. This is the north map of Stonewall Jackson's Way. So as I pull back a little bit, you can see the map is indeed different. The map that we played before would be further north, geographically speaking, than here. And what I think is really interesting is you actually can see and appreciate the railroad line that leads to the valley, the Shenandoah Valley. So over here, this red path is that critical rail line that eventually leads to Manassas Junction. So what I do find interesting about this, just as a kind of side comment, that it is fun to kind of look at these maps. They're beautifully done. They're at a really nice scale where you can kind of see, there's small towns, there's even houses that are illustrated on the map, and you can still get a sense of the strategic importance of the region. And you can even bust out. I mean, it was fun to go look at the a strategic level American Civil War game and kind of look at the map and go, okay, on that map of U.S. Civil War from GMT, for instance, you can see like the couple of hexes that this whole game represents. That yeah, there's a rail line. Without that rail line, if the Union were to cut that rail line, the rebels would have a harder time, not impossible, but a harder time getting reinforcements into the Shenandoah Valley. So there's a very real strategic bit to this. And even more tactically, when we look at this game situation here, where unfortunately for the U.S., this is after Johnston's already moved the majority of his forces via rail into Manassas, and so the two armies here about to fight are much closer in manpower than otherwise. And in fact, when you really look at it again, I like think about the strategic implication. You need numerical superiority as the attacker to make a real effect. The fact that the rebels were able to consolidate forces to where they had near parity, functionally 1-to-1 odds in any other sort of strategic game or perspective of it. Like in a strategic game, do you try to attack at 1-to-1 odds? We tend not to want to do that. And in this case, because of the railing of Johnston's forces, that is what the U.S. Army has to deal with, is a force that is um, almost equal in size, or just about equal in size, that you would round that way. And then the enemy is on basically the defensive, and they have the benefits of a river line, and like all these things stack up and go, well, all green alike. But in a strategic sense, it is very hard to imagine how can the U.S. really succeed here. They did lose historically, and all these factors that we would normally look at from a strategic level are in place. That the defender is going to probably do well. Um, the railroad junction is so important when you look at, if you went east here, DC is actually like right over here, like off camera, several inches, but it's right over there. I could go get the Roads to Gettysburg map for that and put it on here. I'm not going to do that, but certainly could to give that context. I want to save my table space for the moment, but Washington's very nearby. So when you look at like, oh gosh, like what happens if this Union Army, this U.S. Army is completely thrashed? Well, It's certainly feasible that there's, right here, a rebel army that could be pressing towards DC. Now there are rules, special rules that kind of govern, how they can't really do that, and there's these fortresses, and it's really hard. But just knowing that you're that close to DC, realistically speaking, here in terms of the total map space and the geographics of it, is really interesting. And just knowing that, well, if the Union did win, let's say, manage to get into here, Manassas Junction, and you performed very, very well. Yes, you're removing a threat, um, to DC in many ways, and then when you look at, being able to use this rail line, like, right, the Union could use it to distribute more reinforcements further south. They can deploy and rail reinforcements down the way. You cut off, the rail junction that eventually leads off into the valley. So all of a sudden, if the rebels wanted to operate in the valley, they don't have the benefit of getting forces there via railroad, which makes it a lot harder for them to reinforce and maintain effort. And so you can start to choke out the valley, and in fact send, Union reinforcements into the valley via this railroad if you were to take control of it. So all those important things, it just helps to show, like, yes, Manassas Junction was really important. It is, really useful to have controlled that junction, and to continue moving south as the Union. Important to defend it as the rebels, and everything else. So, um, interesting from that perspective for sure. I appreciate being able to look at the map in a holistic manner, and kind of see the repercussions from an operational standpoint of, like, why is this important right now, beyond just, yes, I know it's the Battle of, First Bull Run. It is important. It's a big clashing of arms here, but on a strategic level, there's a lot of interesting considerations here. So very cool. What I've done is I've put my multicolored bingo chits on the map to denote the areas that are going to matter the most for victory point calculation. There are two big ones. These are worth 15 victory points, a 15 victory point swing either way for Centerville. So the rebels want to take Centerville here if they can, which is kind of like the main position of the Union. And then likewise, the Union wants to control Manassas Junction for all the reasons I just said. So those are kind of like the main big show items. If you can succeed in pushing the enemy back from that position and you can hold it, then you're going to be in good shape. You do get some minor victory points if, as the Union, if, like, you're close to Manassas Junction. So that same marker here just indicates, like, get close to that or take it, and we'll get some victory points. There's also a smaller set of victory points, is more around, like, the scale of 8 victory points, which I have in blue here. So Groveton, that's worth 4 victory points for either side. A 4-point swing. Then I'm sorry, that's 8 victory points. 8, so pretty good, right? Like that's quite good. And then a smaller 4 points govern Bull Run Bridge here. So I also have blue. I don't have that many different colors, so I had to kind of just decide, like, the big ones are green, the medium 8, 4 or 8 is blue, and then there's a couple more points, 2 and 1 respectively, for the ones in red. So they're not as important, but certainly we could seek to pick up some victory points for capturing those locations. And then the same as most other scenarios, victory points go up and down based on manpower losses. So, if we can avoid taking too many losses and achieve these objectives, then that's the perfect scenario. If we spend a lot of manpower to take these positions, then we kind of offset ourselves a little bit there. So you could, there's a kind of the tug of war there on the VP scale. You can look at a number of different ways, right? Bloody the enemy so that their gains are offset. Then, as the rebels, maybe you're doing that to the U.S. Army. If you can deplete their strength, give up a little bit of territory, that might be, in terms of the scenario victory, in your favor. So something to look at there. The U.S. actually needs to get at least 6 victory points to get a victory. So, again, like the locations that can give us some. If we can come out ahead on manpower losses, that could be it. Um, and the overall position here is such that, again, we're stuck in this poor situation where, like, just the way that it is the day of battle. The strategic options to try to pursue to keep Johnston from reinforcing Beauregard aren't there. The rebel forces are consolidated. We don't have any real large scale maneuver opportunities. We have forces here. I'm using the force markers to kind of help keep the stacks not super tall. I have them just right there within reach. Many units on the rebel side are underneath defensive entrenchment markers that will have a shift on the combat. But it's not as though we have a lot of time to do like a big wheeling maneuver through Prince William County and coming like from way over here. We don't have the time. It's one turn, which means that each individual unit, once they max out at 4 fatigue, they're done. So if we spend too much time trying to navigate these roads and coming around really wide, we're going to run out of time and probably not have gotten very much for it. And if the rebels can like attack while you're trying to do this big complicated maneuver, it's likely they can drive the fatigue up and keep them out of where they want to go. So trying to do something that is like you are constrained as the Union, where you can't do a big wheeling maneuver out around. You just don't have the time. It's the day of battle where we're going to fight. That's what's going to happen. So the shorter flank of trying to get through, this is the game as history notes are really good in describing, like, oh, hey, the Union found this road where you could go over here and try to outflank Stone Ridge. So that's kind of one option. Come send some forces out around here, and you can do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 if you had 6 movement points, and kind of come out around. That would be a pretty good shot, right? You could do that. That's kind of historically what they were trying to do. The maybe the other option, and it's tough to imagine trying to do this. Um, you know, McDowell had looked at the rebel right to see, like, is it worth it, and he was like, oh, the terrain is crap, let's not do that. You could try, right? You could try. You still have to deal with the river no matter what you do. But you could try to come down this way, but again, too wide, and you're going to run out of time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that's at least 2 fatigue, probably, or more, to get even down to here, assuming that the rebels don't shift on you. So trying to come around this way, that's difficult as well. So we're very much locked into, in my mind, like we kind of have to do the historical moves, and maybe the dice will give the Union a better end result over time. We'll have to see how that goes. The other thing we have to be careful of is we can't, you know, overcommit so much that we kind of leave all this over here open, because it is feasible for the the Confederates, the rebels, to do something and like be pushing this direction and like coming into Centerville themselves. They could go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, well within a couple fatigue to come out around the U.S. position. So we can't move everybody, because then we give up the ghost here in the middle. And I don't have much confidence in these small regiments that only have a handful of manpower each, to make much of a difference. They're really there to guard the path over to DC. So we really have a limited set of options in this scenario, but it's going to be good to experience, just to fight out a big battle and understand, when I play the full Virginia campaign, what situation do I want to not be in? Like if the campaign is being played and it starts to look too much like this, that might be really bad for the U.S. and I'll know that. So I want to see just the historical place of battle, the historical situation, just how bad is it for both sides, or what's the situation, and that will inform my play when I get to the Virginia campaign later on. So, yes, that's that's an intro, and I think what I'm going to do here is uh, I'm going to talk through a few other of the special rules for this scenario, and we'll keep an introduction self-contained video and leave turn one to the next one. So give me a second, and we'll talk through some of the special rules that are going to apply for this scenario in particular. So the special rules for this scenario have a couple different flavors. So there's actually not a lot of special rules here. Um, that one, the Confederate player may not make any leader transfers in the initial leader transfer phase that starts the game. So they do not have that option. That's an easy one. The Union Night March. The scenario starts with an automatic Union Night March per All Green Alike Advanced Game Rule 11.2. All units in the scenario part of the Union Potomac Army. So the Union player gets 3 free initiatives per the restrictions of 11.2. And what that represents, I'm not going to like dictate the whole special rule there, but basically this is something that would matter for the campaign game where during a night you can attempt to make a night march, and you basically get several activations to make with units at the beginning of the turn, as if you had one initiative for those things. You get to just activate units, but those three activations are basically like, you could almost consider them simultaneous. It's each activation has to be a leader activation, and each set of units can only be activated once. So you're basically like, if you have three activations, like we will have in this scenario, we could have three leader activations and none of the units could be activated a second time. So it's just, we're going to end up taking some of the forces right here, moving them, some forces over here, moving them, and one other set of units and move them functionally is what that's going to mean. You can't initiate combat. Only one enemy Zoc may be entered. And you can't move from one enemy Zoc to another. So it's almost like a freebie non-combat move to get in a position, which makes sense because a lot of the Union starts in these hexes all bunched up together. Um, but you have basically that time in the night that McDowell moved some forces around to prepare for the day, and we can do that. So that this is our opportunity before the rebels have a chance to say one way or the other, for us to kind of pick our approach. Who are we going to send where, and what are we going to be able to achieve? Granted, we're still going to have movement die rolls, so we could end up not moving nearly as far as we would like. So that's a really a nice way to ease into the night march mechanic, that we get to see a preview of it in this scenario. The other thing that's going to go on, and I've got the marker out here to show it, is we've got Confederate command paralysis, which again, we're referenced to the advanced game rules where this is a random event that could happen. But basically, what it's going to mean is um, whenever the rebel player would win initiative by rolling a 6, the U.S. actually gets initiative, and then that could happen twice. And after the second time that happens, the rebel player will win initiative on 6s. So the way it's described is it functionally gives the Union player 2 extra active, initiative wins, effectively they wouldn't otherwise get when the rebel player rolls a 6. So 1 in 6 chance on the rebel player's die roll, and it would just go over to the U.S. player. So that gives them at least a little bit. Some additional opportunities maybe to get to activate at the right time to make a difference here, and I think that is reflecting a little bit of the confusion that Beauregard and Johnston had early on at the very beginning of the battle, to go like, oh, who's going where? Where's the fighting really occurring? Oh, it's happening over west. We're going to send some guys over that way. We also have a unit that is currently in trained for railroad movement over here. Elze is at this depot. That unit is not allowed to actually leverage railroad movement and move from that hex until command paralysis is over. So it's like the last remnant force of Johnston's forces that is still looking to board trains and make it on over. They cannot move until we get through the command paralysis. And what's funny is like what could happen is, I mean, if we don't get um, those sixes on the rebel die for a while, you know that could be quite a delay. A couple other minor special rules is that Richardson is technically part of the first and fifth uh, division, so in theory, another leader could activate him besides Tyler. Not a huge deal, but just good to know. And then finally, just they want to point out that the Union is in control of Centerville. I don't have a control marker there currently, but that I'm not even sure. I mean, I guess that's a special rule, just noting who controls what already. And that's it. So there's a few of those extra rules that really govern the beginning of the battle, the confusion between Johnston, or the confusion just Johnston and Beauregard had on like where the fighting is going to be happening. That's reflected, and then the night marches that McDowell had, where we're gonna kind of pick where we're engaging at based on those night marches, and once those night marches are complete, then we'll go to regular initiative determination. And I would think the Union really wants to win that first rolled initiative, because their night march is going to get them in a position, and then if they get the first real initiative, they can actually make use of the position they marched into to try to make an attack, start to knock the rebels off balance, and try to achieve some kind of victory. So that's the hope. I would certainly hope that we can get something going where if we roll really high in a night march, we go, around this Zoc and end up behind their position. That would be really great if we could achieve it, but we'll see. Anyway, that's the intro to the end of an end to Innocence scenario. When we pick up in the next video, we'll start with completing those night marches and get Ernest through. Well, I was going to say turn one, but it's really the scenario. So you get an intro video for this one, and then the actual play results in the next one, a 2 video subset here, folks. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hope this was enjoyable and informative to some degree. We'll see you in the next one for the actual playthrough of the battle. Looking forward to it. So take care. Keep on gaming.